We're just about 1 minute away, so we're going to get started. And welcome to the Data Science Day-to-Day panel, where we're going to go into an exploration of data-driven industries. And I'm very lucky to be joined by an incredible group of panelists. So my name is Dwyer. I'm the Academic Chair for Data Analytics and Artificial Intelligence at the School for Advanced Digital Technologies at SAIT. And I am thrilled to be joined on stage by this lovely group of people. So we have Annette Cooper, Director of Data Analytics at Graham Construction. We have Chris Sorenson, Founder and President of Iteration Insights. And we have Katie Underwood, Product Manager and Product Traction Lead at Linear Labs. So for the next 90-ish minutes, give or take 15 to 20 minutes for questions towards the end, our panelists are going to share their insights, their experiences, success stories, and even challenges around their respective fields and data science, and showcase the powerful impact that data science has on business operations and on decision making. So as I mentioned, this is going to be around 90-ish minutes of this kind of discussion with 15 to 20-ish minutes of your questions interspersed. But if you do have questions, if you could hold them towards the end, that would be fantastic, just because I don't want to interrupt these lovely humans and the discussions that they're having. And with that, let's get started. So for introductions, can you each tell me a bit about you, your company, and your data journey? And Chris, you're closest to me, so I'm picking on you first. I'll start with you.
Well, thank you very much. So my name is Chris Sorenson. I'm the founder and president of Iteration Insights. We are a Calgary-based analytics consulting firm specializing in the Microsoft suite of analytics products. Draw the lines around those products however you see fit, because they're constantly changing because of the marketing departments out there in the software industry. I've been part of the Calgary data ecosystem for a very long time right now, and the map that we saw a little bit earlier was quite intriguing, because I was reflecting that back in the early 2000s, there was about 4 or 5 user groups here in town, and now there's just an explosion of community around this, which I think is fantastic. I have a long history of teaching up at SAIT and various programs and things like that. Very much big into the academic world and helping people grow their careers in data. At the end of the day, that's how I've grown my company, is by finding good talent, working with them, coaching them, growing them, being patient. And I think that's what a lot of organizations, in my opinion, need to be doing to kind of grow the tech talent out there, because we're facing a shortage. The only way to really grow this is by bringing on talent that can grow this stuff up and work with those people.
Nice to be on the panel with you all. My name is Katie Underwood. I'm a Product Traction Lead at Linear Labs, which in the Product Traction Services team, we offer product development and software development services to help early stage ventures get to their next stage of growth. We are not data scientists by trade, but we work with data extensively, both in terms of the products that we're supporting local Western Canadian companies to build, as well as extensively using data to make decisions to help ventures accelerate their growth. My background academically is in physics and computer science, and I worked as a software developer for a number of years before moving into product management. And yeah, really excited to give the product perspective on the panel and how a lot of the ventures we work with are using data.
Morning. My name is Annette Cooper, and I am, as it says on there, the Director of Data and Analytics at Graham Construction. We build stuff. If you have been on the southwest Calgary Ring Road for a drive, that was us. A lot of tall buildings, a lot of water treatment plants, both in Canada and the United States. Really big company, do about $5 billion a year in turnover. Really immature on the data and analytics side, but a lot of goodwill, so that's exciting. My background is actually in psychology and in how people make decisions, and then as careers are funny things, that morphed into how organizations make decisions. So I come at this from a slightly different angle, which is fun, because I'm always the person who's asking the weird question on the side. But I'm also in charge, so too bad.
Thank you, everyone. And I really do think that the variety of perspectives here is going to be fantastic. And kind of to get us started, I know data science is this somewhat nebulous term, and quite often people get, like, what is data science? What is a data scientist? What's a data analyst or engineer, and how is that different? They get these questions kind of tossed up and conflated, and in each business, it can look a little different. So I'm going to toss it back over to you, Chris, to start, but what are the roles in data in your company, and how would you define data science?
I'm really glad you asked that question. So data science by definition to me is sometimes a little bit misunderstood in my opinion, at least, and of course it's just one person's opinion around this. To me, data science is kind of using your data to look forward and predict and make good decisions. But what that really relies on is having good data in behind you in which to build those decisions on. So that's where the other roles start to come in and really help out, and that is, classically what would be called a data engineer, data analysts, and those are kind of the three roles I'd like to keep things at, because you could get into all kinds of different roles and just start confusing things, but I like to try and keep it simple. Data analysts, kind of working with the data on a day-to-day basis in the business, often doing an awful lot of descriptive analytics. There's a whole lot of runway out there still in the descriptive analytics world. I know the world loves talking about AI and machine learning and predictive and all these things. If you read LinkedIn, you'd swear there's nothing going on in the world anymore in descriptive, but there's still an incredible amount of work that needs to be done in every organization to get their data prepared for the dream of data science. So I think when you start getting those different roles working together in an organization, getting data prepared and clean sounds easy. It's a lot more work than it sounds like. Starting to use and consume that data and learn about things, and then once you get that foundation, then having the ability to put those data scientists in front of things to say, what's going to happen next? Let's use that good data to predict where we're going to go.
Katie, similar but not quite the same question. Like, how are you using data in your organization? Because you mentioned, you're not necessarily data scientists, but like, how then is data being used for your group?
Yeah, for sure. It's a really great question. So I would say that it falls kind of into two main categories. So we are both supporting ventures that have data and data science and data analytics as the foundations of the product that they're building, but we're also doing not exactly data science, but more on the product analytics side to decide what we should build and whether our efforts are being successful. So we're very big proponents of what we call the experimental mindset, which is obviously very familiar to anyone with a scientific background, where when we're working with early stage ventures and really deciding what is the right thing to build for the right customer, who is the right customer at the specific stage of their growth, we want to know early on, are our efforts being successful? So rather than having a very, very long-term roadmap and saying, all right, we're going to set our sights over here and off we go, and hopefully in 2 years we'll know if we've been successful. That's a dangerous way to build a company. A much safer and more effective way is to figure out what is the leanest slice of something that we can build, execute on, put in the market, and then measure if our hypothesis about how customers are going to respond to that has been successful. And the way that we do that assessment is through using product analytics, which is a lot, less scientific, I would say, than data science. Often we don't have an exact metric that we know, if we hit this number, we've been successful. It's kind of drawing lines in the sand and being able to measure comparatively, are we moving in the right direction? So that's a huge part of the product manager's toolkit in terms of determining whether what we're building is something that we should continue with or whether a pivot is necessary. And then, of course, kind of coming back to what you said, Chris, on the roles side, a lot of the ventures that we work with have those different roles in their shops. Data science, engineering, and as a product manager, I work with all of those stakeholders very closely from the very early days of a project's inception to make sure that not only are we building something that customers are going to love, we're doing things that are possible. We're doing things that are scientifically and technically sound.
Yeah, that sounds a whole lot like data science in my heart.
Yeah.
And Annette, we're going back over to you. Like, in your organization, where is data science fitting, and what are those roles like?
So I think important context is my department is an overhead, right? So I have data science and engineering and all of those things that all of you are doing or aspire to doing. But the reality is that we're an overhead. So we have to prove value, not conceptual value, but actual value to the business, or we'll be cut. And I think many of us have seen a bunch of layoffs in the tech sector recently, so that's not a surprise. So when I think about data science, I don't think about data science, and I don't think about defining that as something, and I don't think about looking for someone who has X number of years on their resume as data science. What I look for and think about is what I need are curious people who can talk to business leaders and figure out what their problems was. The last guy who had, what's the business problem as the first thing and joked we should all be starting there. We cannot not start there at Graham. We just cannot not. I cannot be sitting around going, oh, it'd be really interesting if we looked over here into this and thought about what we could do. Doesn't fly. So that's what I'm looking for when I'm thinking about anyone who comes to work in my group, whatever their job title is. That is the key first skill. And then the stuff that comes after that, well, then if you have more data science-y background, then we'll push you in that direction afterwards, put you on those projects once they're scoped and formed. But I really don't define data science, because then I'm putting myself in a box that I can't afford to be in.
That sounds very fair, and it also sounds like a question of, or at least determining what the ROI is going to be for your company. And like, what is that return on investment for having data and having data science? So what advice would you give to either your own company or to other companies on like how to actually, like, what metrics they should track to say like, hey, no, data science or like data is important here, and these data roles need a space.
So I have one key metric, which is a reduction in the number of times I get asked for AI by senior executives. That is a key metric for me, and put that in my performance management plan, because that means that they're being spoken to by vendors who are trying to talk them into stuff that we're not ready for. So that's a key metric. And actually, when you talk to, like in my company, when you talk to people who are out in the field, and I literally mean in a field, right? Like in a little box, in a field, building like a road or putting down concrete for something, they need to know, is my project on track? Is my money on track? And they don't want me to tell them that we could spend 6 months developing a model that might tell them that later, or something else. Like, they need to know those really practical things. Those are the things that get me sway, right? When we can actually clean up the descriptive stuff, when we can get people who are working on those projects, because every day a major project goes behind, we are losing millions of dollars. So if I can claw back with the help of what a lot of people would look at as really basic analysis work, millions of dollars, then I have done a good job, and then I can make the case for, could I have this person whose return on investment may not be seen for 2 to 3 years?
It's a bit of a selfish question for me as someone who's working on programming and constantly redeveloping programming for data analysts running the data analytics program, let's say. So I'll toss out a question or a similar question off to you, Chris. How are you pitching? Because I know you're working with consulting. Like, how are you pitching the need for data science to clients?
To me, it really kind of starts off with some really simple things. Is sometimes just timeliness of information and trustworthiness. If you can focus in on those two to start with, you're moving things in the right direction. Because for those of you out there that are in the data space and you see these opportunities all over the place, it amazes me to this day, and also kind of shows me and everyone in the audience the opportunity out there that is around data, is that how many organizations still struggle to get information that they can trust on a timely basis. I was having lunch with a CEO the other day, and they were reflecting how about a year ago they came to this company and they said, hey, can you tell me what the sales were yesterday? And they said, well, we'll get that to you in 2 weeks. It's 2022. People are still struggling with these things, and that's okay. You need to start working towards getting those types of things in place, like timely information. And if you get it in a timely fashion, can I trust it? Can I make a decision? Are we going to have conflicts? To me, I'll probably end my career in data, still preaching data 101 topics, because a lot of people still just need to kind of refocus on the basics and not get all caught up in things that are distractions and things like that. We've already kind of heard a couple of things that are a bit distracting as well. Even my son's hockey team, keep it simple. Like, to keep the game simple. Don't make it complex. You don't need to do that. You win by keeping things simple. And like I said, I always take things back to timeliness and trustworthiness, and if you can start building on that, and you're in a great spot. And if you can find those opportunities in your organizations and use modern tooling, and I'm not going to flaunt you the tools we use and stuff like that, you can start becoming a rock star in a lot of organizations. In fact, that's a lot of times things that I try and help people with is go help that person out. They're struggling. That business process is mired in problems. Go over there and be that rock star. Grow your career right there. And they're going to love you for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on a piece there with data literacy and that basic, what is data? Why are we using it? And is this obviously like worth our investment? Is there a return there? Katie, with your organization, how are you basically describing that to the groups, being like, hey, this is why we're making database decisions and data-driven decisions? Because I recognize that that's obviously a very big part of what you do.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, what both of you said really resonated with me with a lot of conversations that I have with companies that I'm working with and that my team is working with, because it's so easy for anyone, and particularly for startup founders and early stage ventures who are trying to manage 10,000 things, to get kind of bogged down in all of the data that's available. And in some ways, it's easier than ever before to access data about your product and your business, but that can get really overwhelming. So I think what we always try to bring it back to is a couple of fundamentals. What is the underlying why? What is the question that we're trying to answer? And really emphasizing that what that question is going to be dictated by the stage of growth that you're at. So, you might not need to focus on metrics about how fast can our user base expand, how big can we grow, what is our geographic region, if you're still trying to find your product market fit, if you're still looking for that kind of customer empathy and stickiness of your product. And I think the other thing that we try to really emphasize with ventures is focusing on metrics that are actionable. So if you can't look at something and say, I know exactly how I'm going to change my behavior, either in our business model or in the product that we're putting forward, based on this metric and how it changes, then you probably need to look elsewhere. So I think that those are a few of the fundamentals that we try to stick to.
Yeah, absolutely. And Annette, back over to you. So you had mentioned that one of those key metrics that you were using was like your boss is coming to you saying, hey, we need AI. And I'm recognizing that data science, data analytics have all changed drastically in the last, I was going to say 5 years, but in reality it's the last 5 minutes. And will continue to change that. So how have you seen like the role of data and the role of like data-driven decisions changing in your organization?
So we'll talk about maybe all the organizations I've worked in.
Yes.
Because Graham hasn't changed much. I've only been at Graham a year and a bit, so we'll give them time. It hasn't. And I think to Chris's point, like the promise that I heard 15 or so years ago when I started out has not eventuated. Everything is not automated. Our lives are not like these seamlessly running things, and all is just more and more data that we're struggling to get our arms and minds around what we can do, and there is still a big disconnect between the practical applications of data, as you are talking about, and the organization, that all of the organizations that I've worked in. So there's just this, here's where we want to be, and here's where we think we can be, and then here's where we are struggling to really turn that into business value in any of the places that I've worked in. Or we can do small proofs of concept that start to get people's brains kind of, oh, okay, I think I can see, but then we can't productionize it. We can't make that into an enterprise solution, because then there's a big investment that has to go on in the background for platform or for governance, the big G word, right, that we then have to put in to make that into something, and so it just again looks like a money vacuum. And it's hard to deliver. So I mean, I would say I'm not raining on any of us. But I think as a profession, we haven't lived up to the expectation that was there 10 to 15 years ago. And it's not because we're not all brilliant, but there's some block there.
Yeah, I kind of want to jump in on that one a little bit right now, because we haven't lived up to the expectation, but in some ways almost the expectation was way too high. And not,
It was robots, right? Like it was automatic robots.
Yeah, exactly. So the expectations, in my mind, just need to be brought back down into a little bit more check, because they were way too lofty, where people really needed to go and what was practical, what you could get measurable benefits on, right away. We were just talking about what's important to you, what are KPIs, and I always kind of like to use the test is before you sit down in your chair, in your home office or real office now, I guess. What are the 3 things that you need to know before you start your day? Like everyone sits down saying, I need to know these things. What were yesterday's sales? What's my inventory level? What's my head count? You've got 3 things. What are they, and how do you go about attaining that information? And then you can start tracing that stuff back, saying, okay, now, how efficient is that process? Is it, tying it back to the sales examples? And the funny thing is, some of these examples I'm giving can kind of sound rather academic and say, oh, that's the stuff you hear about in textbooks, and that doesn't really exist. It exists. So then you can start taking a look at some of those metrics and saying, how can I help you get that stuff a little bit quicker? Is there a way to automate that process? And that's where a lot of people want to start. And I think sometimes, I'm going to say, and I'm not going to pick on the business user community, but sometimes they just don't know what the art of the possible even is. They're so busy in their day jobs, they're having such a hard time keeping their head above water that they've never really had a chance to step back and say, what can I actually do? How can I learn something to make my job better and help myself? Not wait for the data team to come save me, but how can I actually practically help myself? And we run all kinds of different training programs that, when we run people through 2 days of stuff, they say, I wish I would have done this 2 years ago. Like, where was I? It's like, well, you were busy. You've got a lot of things going on. You have great aspirations. You want to do things. We all got this list of things we want to do. I got this list of 5 things I want to learn. I don't have time to get to because I'm a pretty busy person between my work life and family life and stuff like that. And we're all people. We're all busy. How do you start getting some measurable return and help yourself?
So I wonder if I can jump in too, because I'm kind of excited about what I'm hearing from my co-panelists. That really sounds like there's a disconnect between almost the technological possibilities of data science and really finding like a product market fit, finding the fit for the customer, which is something that exists in every technology business, right? Like you can build the coolest thing, you can do all the coolest tech, and you can, revolutionize whatever you're part of the industry, but if no one has a need for that, if that's not solving a problem for someone, it's going to be really hard to get traction, it's going to be really hard to get that to resonate. So I wonder if part of what you're describing is kind of that scenario in the field of data science where we have this huge promise, this huge possibility, but because it's such an emerging industry and it's so disconnected in a way from, people at the executives levels day to day, people who are just, sitting down at their chair and they're like, I need to know my sales. I don't care about data science, I just need to know about my sales. I wonder if we as practitioners can do a better job of kind of connecting those dots for people, right? And really starting from what is the need of the target audience and then demonstrating how that can be fulfilled.
Yeah, and I can't blame a district manager or something for not knowing how to interact with our products, right? This is new stuff that they haven't seen before, and so we might throw something their way, like, I don't know what this is, and lack of time to maybe be able to do that. And again, I go back to, I think that more data science don't define that because we're actually in a people business. We think we're in a data business, but we're in a people business because it's our responsibility to help people understand how data can help them, right? And so in order to do that, we have to be building relationships and we have to be thinking about someone else's point of view in the world. And we have to be not blinding them with exciting science possibilities, but just saying really practically, here's something I think can help you. Now tell me if that did. Can we build on that together? So, do it!
I feel your reaction there. I think a lot of it, honestly, is driven by, I'm sure we're all on LinkedIn and Twitter and all kinds of different social feeds and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, it kind of touches back to what you're saying, as well as the vendor community is always pushing their agenda into LinkedIn and all these forums, and then the executive are watching these things, hearing vendor presentations. I'm a vendor as well, but I like to consider myself being a little bit more pragmatic and not trying to oversell people. But there are those out there that are overselling the promise. And if you just buy my tool, all your problems are going to go away. And it's hard when you're a user out there struggling.
Put it in the cloud, Chris.
Yeah,
There's no
problem
problems
in
in
the
the
cloud.
Exactly, buy my tool and put it in the cloud. And then all your problems are going to go away, right? And it's hard to blame somebody in the business somewhere that says, I'm drowning, I need help, no one's here to help me. I'll pull my credit card out and get whatever that thing is or that promise, right? So it's a challenge, right? So trying to get those personal relationships set up, and it's a people business, right?
Yep.
Establish those relationships, and then it will help them out.
We were making that joke because a vendor actually told me that once we moved their product to the cloud, and I won't say who it was, there would be no problems.
This is fantastic. You guys are making my job so easy. I love it. This is phenomenal. Well, because the next question I was going to ask is what is the biggest challenge that you're facing in your industry, in your organization, or in past organizations even, around using data? And is it the ability to analyze it? Is it the tools that you're using? Or is it actually the people? Because at the end of the day, you're right, we all do data science in some way, shape, or form. We're all working with data, we're all analyzing it. And I would argue even, I think we had discussed this earlier on a customer, on a consumer level. Day to day, we're using data to make every decision. I wore a dress today because I knew based on my entire closet, the data that was in my closet, there were no clean pants. So we're making data-driven decisions at any given point. What is the most challenging aspect for your industries?
Maybe, boy, it's hard to say what is the number one, but I'd kind of maybe list a couple. Number one is data quality. And data quality can be defined by across a number of different dimensions. Is where is it? Is it good enough? Is it trustable? Is it complete? Is it timely? Like all these different facets of data quality. I don't remember the 7 list off the top of my head. But the fact that there's lots of data out there, but is it good enough to inform your decisions? Can you actually go ahead and use it? Data is your raw material, right? So you work in construction, so you expect high quality materials. If I expect a bridge that's going to stand the test of time, I want to be using good materials, right? Same thing in the data world. If you don't have good inputs and good quality, and the phrase data or garbage in, garbage out been around forever, that's probably one of the biggest things. And then maybe I'll save a couple for you. I don't want to go and list them all.
All of that, and construction is probably a little further behind on some of this stuff. The construction industry generally, a little bit behind on overall IT spend, and then as a subset of that, the data analytics kind of progress. And that challenge, I think, comes from because we build things and they're very tangible and you can go and look at them and walk around them, and then when we talk about some of the work that we do, you can't do that with it, right? So I think that's probably a big challenge for me, because when you're back in that relationship game and you're out in the field talking to people who are, I don't go in the field. Oh, I don't want to be in our field, but when we're out talking to people who are managing people in the field, getting that kind of idea across about how this can be tangible beyond the reporting that they are used to, which is quite literally columns and rows at Graham. That can, one of the first key requirements I got in a meeting was that it had to be printable, because we've always printed stuff. So though that sort of slightly behind the times stuff is a big challenge in construction, and I know that from talking to other peers in similar roles.
Yeah, I think I love that about printable, the cloud.
I had to,
no problem.
so someone asked, they asked me for a paginated report, and I had to look up what paginated meant, because I had never heard that word. And it means printable. It's 2023.
I love asking questions about the data that they're sharing with organizations and being worried about their personal security and privacy online. But then for an organization or a venture that is relying on being able to collect not necessarily personal data, but some amount of data about that customer. So I'll give you an example without using names for confidentiality, but we're right now working with a Series A company who make tools for small businesses. And right now, different users use different parts of the system and they're kind of disconnected. So maybe you're doing some stuff with your inventory over here, you're doing some stuff with your advertising over here, and the vision is to be able to use the data from those different parts of the application to actually give that customer a wholesome picture of their business. But we have a lot of work to do on the customer relationship side to, gain that trust of the customer that we are using your data responsibly, we're storing it responsibly, you can walk away with it once you decide to leave our platform if that day comes. We're not going to maintain that forever and sell your stuff to third-party advertisers and so forth. So that customer relationship piece, as well as, of course, the data integrity piece on our side, making sure that we are earning that trust by being responsible is super important and a big challenge that we face every day.
No, absolutely, and I think that also brings us back to what Annette was talking about earlier with that big G governance, and that big piece of doing data science as an organization. And I kind of want to touch on what some of those best practices look like for you for data governance, and where are we as organizations, as industries, missing out. This is also a very selfish question as someone who's working governance into every piece of our education system, saying hey, this is where you can be doing governance better, and this is what you need to know to be successful in this industry. So I'm going to start.
Oh, the good old governance question. Yeah, of course, governance is really important to kind of most organizations to be able to put those guardrails up around their environments so that you can, in my mind, my take on governance anyhow is to let users be able to do what they want freely within some guardrails so that they don't accidentally start sharing things outside of their organization or with the wrong people and things like that. So I like to refer to it nowadays as small G governance. It isn't the thou shalt not or the no, because I remember I had a boss a long time ago who said, if you're just going to say no to people, I don't need you. You need to find ways to work with people and be able to figure out a way to say yes and things like that. So governance is kind of getting those guardrails set up in the organization, showing people how to do the work, training and educating them, and then getting those mechanisms in place so they can go find the data, understand where it is, understand the degree of quality. I was just having lunch with an old colleague of mine at Palomino a couple days ago, and he works in a large oil and gas company here, and he was speaking with glee about the progress they're making in data governance, and I was like, wow, normally it starts off very academic and with great ambitions, and then you go out in the business and nobody wants to do it. There's a nice meme that floats around on LinkedIn that says, who wants high quality data? Every hand goes up. Who wants to fix it? No hands go up. But this organization was serious about it to the point where they were putting dashboards up saying, hey, VP of this area of operations, your data quality score is 23%. That's embarrassing to that director, especially, or VP, especially when others are saying mine is 50% or higher. So he was mentioning how that now they've actually got their data quality scores into the 80s, which is huge, right? That's not measurable progress, that's huge. I guess it is measurable, but that's huge progress because there's an organization that's finally taking it and they get it and they're seeing the value of governance and quality and investing in that type of stuff. So I always like to kind of go back to small G governance, give people the guardrails, give them the tools to do their job, and then go from there.
Yeah, I love that about, who wants to fix it? And I think that that's something that we see a lot, obviously, in the tech space. So when we're building things from scratch, if we have the luxury to work on a greenfield project, building the governance structure in from day one is always way less painful. And that's where I think, working on a cross-functional team and really bringing all of the stakeholders in from the very early days of the inception of the project can be extremely valuable. So if you have, the product manager, you have the founder, the business owner, you have the data scientists, the data engineers, the software developers, everybody at the table, every decision that you're making about, hey, what are we going to build? You also have that component of that, how are we going to make sure that we stay compliant and build it in from the ground up, because doing that after the fact is nobody's favorite job. And then I think that one of the things that, the other things that you alluded to, Chris, is getting people really engaged in that. I think that the conversation has to be that this is part of the work. You know, and I think that the perception in organizations is sometimes that this is like an off the side of your desk task, or it's a kind of a nice to have, but it's not the real work. So yes, it may not be the most exciting work, but it's going to actually enable you to move forward and, you know, retain the respect and the trust of your customers and not get sued and all those good kind of things. So it is the real work, even if it's not the most glamorous task.
Yeah, I think it's got a bad rap, right? Like it's been really viewed as deeply unsexy stuff, because it's not AI or whatever, right? Like it's just been kind of pushed to the side as this very unsexy, very hard work. At Graham, the story that I have sold them is that you know, if we want to treat our data as an asset, which means, and we have a large equipment fleet, right? Like trucks and concrete mixers and all that sort of stuff that supports construction. And we treat that very much as an asset. It's an asset on our balance sheet. And we have to look after that in a way that means that all of the concrete mixers don't break down at once. So that's the story about data as well, right? That we have to take care of it, and we have to be thinking about it as a life cycle thing, and that ultimately all of the data breaking down at one point is going to impact how well we do our business and how quickly we're able to get to higher profit margins. So that's how I've been talking about governance, but in terms of practicality, we are not doing it at the moment. Just flat out, like it's just not happening. So as we move on to our new technology platform, exactly to your point, Katie, we are building that in from the bottom of that, but it's a lot of work to go around talking about how we're then going to need people in the business to take responsibility for different domains of data and what that's going to mean, and exactly that it is not an off the side of your desk job. This has to be done properly in the same way that we change the tyres on all of our F-150s winter, summer, right? It's that same thing.
Yeah, it's always nice when you can kind of get that baked into the fabric of the organization and not sound like it's a task you're doing begrudgingly, but it's something that you just do because it's part of organizational success. I was kind of been a data nerd for a long time, but you know, even driving through the country and stuff like that, and you know, talking about big assets and stuff like that is, you know, drive down the highway back down to Lethbridge, where I'm originally from, and I see a couple train cars sitting on the side of the road, and I go, I wonder if the railroad knows those two cars there. They're probably worth a couple $100,000 a piece. Is their master data management telling them there's two cars sitting outside of Claresholm that, you know, I drive by, you know, a couple times a week and they're still sitting there? That's a lot of money sitting there, right? The answer is probably not. Their master data in their organization probably is not reflecting all of their very valuable assets like their train. And on the other side, you know, the customer side of things, knowing who all your customers are, who's my most valuable customer. You know, that kind of ties back to the, you know, all these kind of tie together is the data quality, data governance, master data management, is how do you kind of set up for good, quality, reliable analytics? And can you answer the question, who is my best customer? Should I be taking them out for an extra lunch or doing something extra? And if the master data management is not straight, you're probably going to get the wrong answer. And I was working with a client out in Ontario around this very topic, and they were talking about how they embarrassingly went to a conference and sat down with what was their best customer, but they didn't know that. And they said, oh, last year you did $2 million, make a number up here. Last year you did $2 million worth of business with us. And they said, excuse me, we did like over $20 million worth of business last year. And that offended the customer. And probably for good reason, right? Because you should know that that is your best customer. So, you know, that starts eroding the trust in that organization, saying, well, do I really want to keep doing business with these? With this company does not take this seriously. They don't know how important we are to them. So yeah.
I think that's huge for early stage ventures too, about knowing your customer, particularly because when you're building a business from the ground up, who your customer is going to evolve and change over time. And when you're trying to find that product market fit and see how people are responding to your offering, knowing the characteristics of the most ideal customer for your current stage is huge. And a lot of times, things that ventures we work with get tripped up on is trying to build for the 5 years down the road customer, right? right, for the kind of the general adopter, and your profile of your early adopter is not necessarily the same as that general adopter customer. The early adopter is going to be willing to kind of accept more rough edges. They have a really burning need for the problem, and they want to be able to be the first to experience the solution. Versus the general adopter customer who might need a more fully fleshed out solution. They need more bells and whistles. They need more wholesome support. So if you're trying to build for that 5-year person early on, you're going to end up over-engineering things in the wrong direction before you've actually got that validation. And having that data at your fingertips to be able to really dig into what are the characteristics of this person, how do they respond to the product, and have that kind of baked in from day one, so that not only can you see that for your own internal decisions, but then you can start to use that to tell a story to investors when you're going for funding rounds and things like that is hugely powerful.
Yeah, I think actually I'm going to tie to the topic here, data science day-to-day. So you said ideal customer profile, something that we think an awful lot about, which is probably a bit more of a data science activity that we do, is who are the customers that we want to work with as a consulting organization. It might be hard to believe we ask those questions, right? It's like, is this going to be a good long-term customer? Are they going to put the hard work in, right? It's you know, organizations out there sometimes have lofty goals and expectations, and then you kind of quickly figure out, are they truly going to buy into this? Are they going to do the right things? Are they going to put that hard work? Are they going to get up, almost kind of like fitness trainers? Are they going to get up at 7 a.m.? They're going to do the work. They're going to do it every day. Are they going to give up? Like, there's organizations out there you can pick up on pretty quickly and early that get it and they want to do it. And those are really fun organizations to work with, and there's ones that you just know are going to be an uphill battle to work with, and you're constantly fighting with them, and we don't have very many of those, if any at all. But we're always asking those questions, right? Like, what does a good customer look like? Who do we think is going to succeed with their data programs, no matter what part of it is? And it's really no different than a coach looking for a player. They want to look for the ones that are going to put the work in, they take it seriously, they show up on time, they listen, they can take criticism, and they ultimately want to be good, right? So you're trying to look for all those facets. So for those that are kind of getting into the data space, those are some key attributes. You're willing to put in the work. You want to do good. You got your curiosity, I think, was one of the things we talked about a little bit earlier. And it's kind of funny. We were talking a little bit before here about how I see. Probably, I'm guessing somewhere around 2016, 17 is where I really started to see analytics and probably the technology world really start to take big change because of the cloud. And the cloud wasn't the miracle maker, but it did start giving us a lot of opportunity to do some new things. And that kind of in my mind started converging with consumers and people starting to use data more and more in their daily lives. And I look no further than my kids. I live down in Auburn Bay. I drive my daughter every now and again up to COP for figure skating. And first thing I do when we get in the car is, what route are we taking? What's going to get us there the quickest? I don't want to sit in traffic. Where's the red lines on the Google map? Because none of us want to be stuck in traffic. So there's an example of us using data. Another example is when we're going for restaurants. Who by raise of hands, looks at the Google reviews or a restaurant review, say, hey, before I go there, I want to look at the reviews. And I have a criteria of 4 stars. If you don't have 4 or above, I'm not going. But then I still look at those reviews to actually talk about data science in my personal life to say, all right, well, that grumpy person that rated this place 1 out of 5 stars, why did they do that? So I take the context of their comments and I say, I can't believe you gave them 1 out of 5. You like the price, you like the food, you like the service, but you didn't like this other little weird quality about the place. Like, that's not a real 1 out of 5. Outlier, tossed out. Maybe I do want to go to that restaurant. So, I think that we've got some cloud things that are helping out. We've got more and more of our younger generation, because I'm not part of the younger generation anymore, that are becoming data as part of their lives. They're using it every day on their phones and stuff like that. So that expectation is starting to come into a lot of organizations. And I'll never forget, it might have been, it was actually back when my daughter was born. So before 2010, sitting in Toys R Us, and I was asking, hey, do you have this stroller in inventory? And I saw this poor soul that has a phone and Google and can Google about anything on the planet, couldn't query their inventory system. I'm like, because they're sitting in front of a green screen. So, but now that's all kind of evolved. So I think data is becoming more and more pervasive in our daily lives, which is working into our business lives, and there's a ton of opportunity out there for everyone out there.
So then, what advice would each of you give to a company or organization that knows they have data and is just really starting that data analytics, data science journey so that they can start making decisions that are data-driven.
I will go first. Okay. I think the most important thing is always to start with the why. What is the actual question that you're answering? What is the underlying why that is driving you in this moment? Is the question that you're trying to answer, who is my customer? Is the question that you're trying to answer, when I make this particular change to my product, does the customer respond in a way that is contributing to the success of my business metrics? By really focusing on the very narrow singular why in each moment, I think it's a lot easier to kind of cut through the noise and be able to stay really, really focused on driving the outcomes that are going to be most important for your business. And that's not to say that you cannot collect everything. That's not to say that you can't gather all of that data so that you can use it to get different perspectives on your business at different times. But staying really focused on the singular question for that moment and really knowing how you will change your behavior based on that. Because really, it's not about the data or the metric so much as what is the question you're answering with it. If you're on a journey through the woods and you're looking at your compass, you don't care that the compass needle points northwest. What you care about is that you want to be going north. And now that you see it's pointing northwest, you know how you have to adjust your behavior to get to your destination.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. You have to have a business problem, otherwise you're doing data for data's sake, and there's no money in that. The other thing I would say is, as best you can, to sell an idea of a little bit of patience with your organizations, because for someone like me, you can come in and put in a strategy and here's our roadmap, but at the end of the day, the map is not the terrain, right? So we might think this is how we're going to get there, but then we arrive in the forest and suddenly there's a whole bunch of stuff we didn't realize there was a lake there or something else had happened, right? So some patience about getting us where we're getting to, and that once we actually get in, like conceptually, I can draw you all the pictures you like about success. But once we get in there, often what we find is different to perhaps what we expected or not quite the same. So selling some level of patience as well around.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's not easy. It's a hard journey, and you have to understand the terrain. So, we're from Calgary, or most of us in this area and stuff like that. And how many times do you hear about people that go up to the mountains and they take a big hike and they were not prepared for it? They didn't take water, food, they didn't wear the right footwear and things like that. And maybe some of you are one of them. But you just need to be prepared. You need to understand the journey, right? It's not a simple journey. It's not done overnight. It's a multi-year journey. And in some organizations, I shouldn't say some, all, it becomes a program of work. It isn't just a one-time, one-and-done project that we're going to go ahead and stand up and say, all right, we're done, start getting into the project budget, finish, let's move on. It's a part of every organization and needs to be going forward, because data is just becoming that pervasive and that important. And it's not simple, and just because it's not simple doesn't mean you don't start. You got to get moving in on things, and like say, hopefully you've got a group of people that can be patient, and you hopefully got some low-hanging fruit out there so you can show some gains pretty quickly, because that's always a nice way to kind of keep the momentum and excitement going. But it's a journey. It's not easy. Anyone thinking about doing it, you're not going on a 1 kilometer hike on flat land. It's going up in the mountains, scrambling, getting stuck in a snowstorm. It's everything.
Just to carry on with the forest metaphor, because I love it, and I definitely have never been in that situation where I just went off and didn't have food, and we didn't have to almost get rescued. That didn't happen to me personally, but I think it's also, to your point, Chris, about making those incremental measurements and incremental adjustments, right? Like, you don't need to know enough to finish. You just need to know enough to get started and know how you're going to pivot or not as necessary. So you don't go off in the forest, hike for 3 hours, then check your GPS. You want to be checking periodically as you go along so that you can make sure that you're staying on the right track.
I just got to point out a cultural thing. I'm from New Zealand, and there is nothing there that will eat you in the woods. So I don't go to the woods because I don't want to be eaten by the many things here that can eat you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But no, I like you said, like, data science is iterative. It's, if you're not constantly checking and course correcting, then yeah, there's a chance you wander off path and get eaten by something in the woods, which is not ideal.
It's suboptimal outcomes, right?
Well, there's a reason why we named our company originally Iteration Insights. Insights do not come instantly or quickly. You iterate your way to them. It takes a while to get there. And the pathway to B is not a straight line.
Absolutely. And I only have two more big nebulous questions, I promise, and then I will turn it over to audience questions to see what we can pull. But the first is, and like we talked a bit about advice and like what you're going to do for companies there, but what about advice for people just starting out? Like people, not organizations, but students who are graduating in the next 6 weeks to 6 months, who are going to have an understanding of data analysis or of data science, business intelligence. I'm looking at some of our instructors in the audience. What is some advice you would have for these students who are just jumping into careers in this area?
I mean, I would say awesome choice, because there's so much that you can do, and if you're open in this sort of general nebulous world that is data, there are so many places that you're going to be able to go and pathways that you'll be able to find for yourself. So congratulations, only the best looking people work in data, so also second congratulations on that. I would say be super duper prepared for the fact that nothing that you learn will be useful or applicable in a business context, like in the context that I work in, which doesn't mean that eventually some of it may pull together, but think of them as concepts and things that you've learned rather than a hammer with which you would like to bang a nail at whatever company that you work. Be really open to just being curious about not having to prove yourself within the first 6 weeks that you've come into a company. I love the energy of young people who come in with like, I've got all these ideas. I'm like, it's so cool. Do you even know that your laptop doesn't work yet? That's going to take 3 days for your login to work. And this is IT, right? So just come at it with a curiosity about the company or wherever it is that you're going to be working. Don't run too quickly to wanting to apply your own solutions. Meet people, talk to people. You know, careers are marathons, not sprints. So you're just at the first thing, start off slowly, jog a little, walk a little, like you'll get there. And the more time that you spend kind of really looking across all of the things that you can do, the quicker you'll find the thing that is your real passion, right? I know that there'll be people in this room, because I did it too, went way too hard in the wrong direction early on, and then had to kind of backtrack a little bit, and that's fine too, but just be open to all of it and thinking about how you can apply what you've learned to some of the problems, but don't be too quick to think that you're going to solve them.
I love all that so much. I'm just going to cheat and echo everything that Annette said. And I think what I would add is just to double down on that. This is an incredible space to be working in. It's an incredible career. There's so much opportunity both to work for established companies, to start new companies, to explore in this space, be it on the data science side, the data engineering side, the analytics side. And I think also just, to be gentle with yourself. If you're getting into this career for the first time, you don't have to know all of the answers. You just have to know how to ask the questions and be willing to take that step and engage with your colleagues, engage with other people in the community, like the YYC Data Society that's doing so much fantastic work. And be open to learning and growing your skills as you get into your career. I think that a lot of people, myself included, earlier in their careers hold themselves back because they feel like they don't know everything, right? And they're not the experts, so they have no right to participate in the space. And that's absolutely not the case. At whatever stage you're at, you can make a contribution. And as long as you're learning and you're growing and you're keeping your mind open to expand your skills, then that's more than enough.
And ask the question you think is dumb. Because 100% of the time, everyone else in that room is thinking that same question too, but they're too caught up in their own ego to ask it. So ask those dumb questions.
That was an amazing statement. It is, like, honestly, I love that. And I was going to say something else, but now I want to build on that statement. It's interesting. So do I want to start on this? So when you're kind of applying for jobs, you always kind of, I wish industries in town weren't like this. And everywhere, not anywhere, not just in Calgary, but everywhere, is insisting on that industry's experience. And the reason why is because too many assumptions are made. You miss out on that why. I remember sitting in one oil and gas company we're doing some discovery requirements gathering, and I forget what the acronym was. They said, we've got the ABC thing over here. And then somebody else said, I've got the ABC thing over there. And I said, what does ABC mean? They both define the term differently. That's a problem. If you don't have a person in the room that can ask that why question and is not afraid to say, I don't know, and not be shy about it, you've got problems. And that means that's systemically going to keep working its way in front of things. So I always like to say I prefer when people don't have industry experience there because they're going to ask some questions. So I don't understand why, and I understand why. I wish people didn't do this, is insist on specific industry experience because too many assumptions get made. In terms of careers in data for the people that are new to it, come to my talk at 2:30. I'm going to talk extensively about that. But one of the things as well that I see a lot of students, because I was taught at the SATES program for a long time with Frank over here near the front audience, didn't want to come all the way down to the front. It was really funny when we were they were asking about applying for jobs, and the students would say, hey, should I apply for that job? I'm like, yes. Make them say no. You don't discount yourself out of jobs. Put the job, just put your resume in, put it in there, go sell yourself on it, and let them say no. And you're going to hear a lot of no's. Be patient. Keep plugging away at it because, like I said, this is an exciting field. I absolutely love data analytics. Hopefully everyone can feel my passion and excitement for it. I love it. I know I've got employment until I retire. Not that I'm retiring anytime soon. But yeah, get out there and apply for those jobs. And also put together a portfolio. So come up with something that is interesting that you can demonstrate to people, and not just, because I know for us when we're hiring for people, we want to look for beyond the resume. I think the traditional resume is still really important. I can go get that off LinkedIn, read use, and see reviews and stuff. Give me something different. Show me a portfolio of work, even if it's something you're passionate about. If it's sports, if it's some environmental cause, whatever. Put a portfolio of work together and explain what you've done, because that's creative and different, right? So one of the things that we always look for when we hire is somebody who's a never stop learning person. And honestly, when I look at a resume, one of the first things I look for is what classes have you done recently on LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, whatever. What have you done in your spare time to keep the learning going? Because we're in a fast-paced industry. IT is moving at a crazy fast pace. Back in my day, I'd read the SQL Server manual back in on 2000. I forget the old versions, 2007, and that'd be the technology for 3 years. I wouldn't have to go back to the book for 3 years. Now, it changes so rapidly to the point where I've gotten out of book writing, because book writing's, it's dead. I want to do videos and stuff like that that's more real time, because you can change things. But, I forgot where I was going with the rest of this. I'm just getting too excited now. But yeah, never stop learning. Don't say no to yourself. Make somebody else say no to you, and yeah, get that portfolio together.
Oh, sorry, can I jump in really quickly? I just really want to underscore your point about interviews. I interview a ton of developers. If you're a senior developer and you're looking, please come and talk to me after. But for real. And something that I've been guilty of in the past and that I try to do better at in job postings is not making the posting the ideal, because so many times the job posting is the ideal candidate. That, the hiring manager and the engineering manager, everybody knows that person doesn't exist. But they're like, oh, wouldn't it be great if? But then what that does is dissuade a lot of people from applying. So really, to agree with Chris's point, apply for the job. Worst case scenario, you learned something in the interview, you made a few industry connections, and you don't get it. Best case scenario, they're impressed with what you do know. They're impressed with your collaboration. They're impressed with your learning mindset and your approach to teamwork and mentorship. And that's, those things are much more important than a colleague, because specific information can be learned. It's much harder to train that learning and iterative mindset.
Well, I think more looking for fit. I'm looking for personality. I'm looking for how do you learn? Do you bring something to the table that we currently don't have in the team, right? So that is to what else are you interested in? Because if your resume is not huge because you're coming out of school, what else are you into, and what can that tell me about you and the things and how you might be if I bring you into this team, right? So I've always built teams on fit and then skill, because you can teach skills. We can send you places to learn things, but I cannot teach you how not to be a dick, right?
Yeah, that's not that last part. But you know, like in all seriousness, it's very true. Like good performing teams have a variety of different skills.
Yeah.
To be in analytics isn't just for IT people. It's beyond. You've got your degree in psychology. I remember way back when I first got in this space back in the early 2000s, and I was reading an Oracle magazine and it said, "Oh, this Oracle DBA's got their master's in sociology." I'm like, they don't have their IT degree. What are they doing in this? And now I've realized, you know, coming full circle, that it takes a variety of different skills, opinions, walks of life, experiences. That's what you really need on a team. And one of my favorite coaches is Pete Carroll, coaches the Seattle Seahawks. Any Seahawks fans in the room? Anyhow, he looks for fit on the team, for people that have struggled, have a chip on their shoulder, they get unique attributes, and they're willing to be coached and taught things, right? So you learn how to find those things to build a high-performing team that, you know, when the chips are down and we're struggling and the executive's upset, that we're going to find a way as a team to come together on this stuff, and not just fold up like a cheap tent. So I like those types of things too. So
Yeah, definitely going to agree with like all of that. Also, as someone who has a very diverse educational background, like I also started in psychology, went into communications, did communication and cultural studies for my PhD, but focused on social robotics and loneliness. So like, yeah, definitely get that winding path, but using data everywhere. I also just want to throw out there that if you are looking to upskill, State has a phenomenal data analytics program. We also have a business intelligence program, and we are absolutely open for registration.
And don't worry, everything's in the cloud, so no problem.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah, no, never a problem. But this brings me kind of to my last big question, and then I promise to give audience time. What's something you're excited about? What's the next thing you're excited about in this area? You get like 30 seconds to think on it. No more, no less.
Who's it going to be? Who's the most excited?
Well, I'm excited about everything. I thought you were going to just stop at what are you most excited about. I'm excited tomorrow Saturday because I'm super tired and my kids are being up real late because of daylight saving. But in this field, I'm just like, all of you make me really excited, right? Coming to events like this make me really excited because look at what's growing right around us. And look at all the people who are interested, look at all the connections that you can make in the community that you can build as you build a career or in the middle of your career. So all of you make me excited. And the opportunity at Graham makes me excited because it's super nebulous and I've got a really long rope that maybe I'll be successful or maybe I'll end up around my neck. But that's exciting to me, right? That we get to build these things and many of you will be coming into newer teams or newer environments, you get the opportunity to build things from scratch, to really stamp your mark in this world and this kind of growing thing that we've got going on in Calgary. And there are so many opportunities and so many different ways that you can take this career, and really, really awesome people all around you who are wanting to learn together and work together on stuff. So I think the people always excite me. That's why I have a master's in psychology. People excite me, so seeing all of your fresh, exciting faces, good looking as you are, that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm so excited about in this field and in general is the startup space in Calgary. We have so much momentum and we're really getting that critical mass of people who are excited to start companies and who have ideas and who are passionate. And we have so many first-time founders in Calgary, which is really exceptional because I think that it's allowed us to build a really strong community where people are really sharing from and learning from each other. And the intersection of that with the data space is hugely exciting because there's so much potential for really cool solutions to very big problems that people have in the community. And more than ever before, it's easy for an individual to get started. You know, you can go on City of Calgary Open Data Portal and you can find all kinds of cool stuff. You can do a ton of online courses. You can, join organizations like this one to collaborate with your peers. You don't need to go back to school for 4 years and get a formalized degree. You certainly can, and that's another amazing opportunity. But especially for people who, like, I did a big career pivot. I was working in the oil industry. I went back to school and did computer science, and that can be very daunting. And I think that I know a lot of people who have come from disparate industries, and kind of coming back to what both of you were saying about having those diverse perspectives and unlike minds, it's easier than ever before for people to get involved in this field and get engaged in data-based ventures without the necessity of going through a lot of formalism. There's so many resources, and I think that's really, really exciting.
Well, first off, I don't think I've had a question asked me in a very long time where I've been so stumped to answer. But thankfully I had a lot of time to think about it here. But to me, it's kind of, what I'm really excited about is just the growing desire for skill and how the active's starting to build. I can really feel this tidal wave of excitement in organizations, and more starting to become more data-driven, more getting those data cultures built up, more people are wanting to learn about analytics, which is good, because I've been talking about it for a long time, and sometimes I feel like I've been talking to a wall, but more people are excited about it, more people want to get into it, and it's really kind of fun to watch the light bulbs go off when people see what their possible is and what they can do if they keep it nice and basic. And you know, I've always been big on trying to coach, grow, teach, and things like that, and getting involved with the YYC data group here. Super excited that we're all back in person and stuff like that, because I feel the energy when I'm around groups like this to keep that momentum going. And yeah, that's what I'm excited about, the people side of it. It's not the technology. Technology's there. It's honestly, a lot of it's the same as it's been for a long time. Move to the cloud. There's some better things for sure, but it's the people side of it that has me the most excited right now.
So it's not the cloud. Just
The cloud is not the thing that I find most exciting.
okay, I'm most excited about two different things here. First is audience questions, and second is lunch. So with that, we will turn it over to audience questions. So we have one up back. Do I want to? Yes. My mic? No. You can have my mic.
You do it all the way to the bag. It's a lot of cardio.
All the way up.
You're going to get lots of exercise.
Lots of steps.
So I just wanted to ask, as a student, I'm looking to learn new things all the time. So what would you recommend is like the top 3 like platforms or like topics you would recommend for me to like research and learn?
Communication with business people.
Yeah.
We see a ton of work in the AWS ecosystem, and so I think learning one of the big cloud provider ecosystems can be valuable to get a foot in the door.
Yeah, I would say either, well, I kind of like to think of the big 3, so the Microsoft, AWS, Google. Like if you're working in any one of those spaces, you're going to find some stuff, so keep a focus there. And if I missed any, but there's vendors in the room, sorry. There's plenty of stuff out there, but pick something and stay focused. The one thing that I always remember, this one student I was teaching many years ago that felt like every day they needed, do I need to learn C++? Do I need to learn this? Do I need to learn? I was like, whoa, focus, you're in class, get good at the things we're trying to teach you here, not every other thing that's out there, because it's very easy in the technology space, and especially now, to get very distracted. And I would say that student was probably very distracted pre-cloud, so before things really started to accelerate and change. So pick something and focus.
Hello. Okay, first of all, thank you. You guys touched on really interesting topics. And it's funny how we kind of started talking about the people side with Annette, and then Chris finished it off talking about people again. So my question is, we've been talking about business literacy for a while. Now we're talking about data literacy. How do we bring people literacy into this mix?
I love that question so much, because really, I mean, that's what it's all about. It's what it's all about when you're trying to socialize things with internal stakeholders. It's what it's about when you're trying to decide what to build, when you're trying to drive data literacy. And I think that one of the most important things is to understand the why. The same as the data, you've got to understand the why of the person. What is the real motivation that's driving them, and what are the most important problems that they're trying to solve? Because at the end of the day, if you can fulfill a need that someone has, either they have a problem with a current situation that they have, there's something that's pushing them away from their current way of doing things and you can fulfill that need with data, then that's a positive step. Or if they have perhaps an unfulfilled need, there is no current way to solve that problem, then that can be really valuable. And sometimes the why is not what you think it is. You know, you might be seeing a behavior, you might be seeing a symptom, but not an underlying cause. So I think always really digging deeper and having that empathy for the person in their situation and trying to understand what is their context is super valuable.
Yeah, I would say everyone in this room is infinitely curious. I think that's why we got into data, right? Because it's something that you can turn your curiosity to. So take that strength and turn it towards people. How can I be curious about this person? How can I understand issues that they're standing in, the problems that they have? And listen properly, which is really hard sometimes, right? To listen properly. Often I find people will say to me, well, okay, well, we do this thing. Who's the client? And I say, we're an internal team. I don't have any clients. You're not my client. You can't tell me what to do. We are colleagues who are working towards making Graham a better place. So I don't take the client mentality internally. What I take is you have a problem, I have a problem, together we can fix that, right? And then I turn your curiosity towards that person, their perspective, and the problem, and then you can apply your enormous brain to the solution.
Thanks for the panel discussion today. Question specifically to Annette. I don't imagine Construction 101 came with a lot of people's data science or data-related backgrounds. What are you doing to build an understanding of that within your team and then the trust with your customers?
No, it didn't. But we all live in buildings, so we have some context. So like I said a couple of times, right, we're in a people business. So I would say to my teams, it's really not our job to know how to do everyone else's job at the company, but it is our job to have key people that we can go and talk to when we don't understand a process. So much of what we do is about reaching out, and Graham does a lot of different things, and they're not all the same, and you do get into trouble if you pretend that building buildings is the same as digging holes. They're not. And the engineers get really upset when you don't understand the difference. But it's just that thing about saying, I turned my curiosity to, I didn't know how to be in the military, which is what I did before I came to Graham, and I don't know how construction works, but I know what I do, and then if you can help me understand better what you do, and together we can work through what the problems are or the things that you think are getting in the way, and then how can I apply my knowledge and understanding of what I do to that with you, not on you or at you. That would be my answer.
If I could add to that quickly too, I think that it kind of comes back to thinking that you have to know everything, and you can never know everything. No one can know everything about a particular domain space, but particularly if you're either within an organization, you're working on a team that perhaps is adjacent or is separate from the kind of core functionality of the business. You're not out there digging the holes or building the buildings either, but still what you're doing is fulfilling a vital function. It's more about knowing about what questions to ask and knowing how to apply kind of the common principles to whatever your situation you're in. And then exactly as you said, Annette, working with that person to figure out how your expertise can solve the problem specific to their domain. Because often the person you're engaging with, they're the domain expert, and you can really learn a lot and rely on their expertise and bring your expertise to the table, like you said, to solve the problem together.
Yeah, I want to actually add a little bit of that too, because one thing I really like about my job is I work in consulting. I get to see across all kinds of different industries, not-for-profits, big, small, globally multinational, work with them all. And what I kind of like saying, I don't know the exact number on this, is I feel like it's about 85% of all businesses, small, large, not-for-profit, global, local, all are struggling from the exact same data and analytics problems. The other 15%, grab yourself a subject matter expert that knows it, can help you walk through it, and that kind of helps you out with that industry, but there's so much in common between everybody. I sat down with a not-for-profit and they said, well, I'm paraphrasing, you don't understand not-for-profits. Our business usually go out and buy software and it puts, we have another system out there we've got to pull data from. I said, everybody does that. That is a problem everywhere, so it doesn't matter who you are, what industry you're in, everything is largely the same. 15% different, get yourself some good subject matter experts, somebody that can help interpret, you're good to go.
Awesome, thanks.
Here.
See one in the back.
Ian over here has a question too.
I did also go to site, and I wore a high vis, and I looked good in it.
Thank you. So my question is that how adaptive is the current market space to the data-driven solutions? So one part is building the right solution, but other is really talking to customers and convincing that something they used in the past was good, but now this is better. So what are your experiences related to that?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I think it's a conversation that we have a lot when we're doing customer research. You know, in the scope of my work, helping ventures find their product market fit, and it's really, I mean, I feel like I only have one answer. It's what is the why? What is the thing that's driving that customer, that person? And so it's really about connecting the technological solution to the problem that they're experiencing in their day-to-day life. Because you can build the coolest thing, you can solve the coolest problems, you can do all these analytics. It can be in the cloud, which has no problems. And it doesn't matter if what you're building doesn't connect to a need for a person and doesn't connect to it in a way that drives their business outcomes. Because that's the other big part of it. You know, if you have just a product, that's not necessarily a business. It also has to be something that people are willing to pay you for. So understanding all of those pieces as I think really fundamental. I'm obviously answering this sort of from my perspective, but curious to hear Chris and Annette's perspective too on how you're talking to people about this.
I can tell you something I don't like. I don't like someone coming up to me and saying, "Oh, what are you using? Oh, that's rubbish. You should use this thing." You know what? You don't know anything about my business. You don't know the problems I'm dealing with, right? Like, I don't doubt that it's great, but you've got no context in me. The other thing I think I would add is just that decisions in an organisation like mine about new pieces of technology take time because we have a complicated, like it's a big company, we have multiple ERPs, we have multiple shadow IT situations going on, right? So it's not as easy as just going, cool, that does look really good, let's bring it in here. All of the tentacles of everything have to be considered. So there's definitely something there about how are you going to, one, really actually understand what my problems are, and two, be patient with the fact that we can't make those decisions quickly in a company our size. It just doesn't happen. So,
Thank you. And I have one follow-up question, if that's okay. Yeah?
you've got the mic, just do it.
Yeah, so let's say once we have the right product, we have the right market space, we do also have the competition just like past, right? So when we go with data-driven solutions, there are two things. Do we improve the accuracy as a selling point, or do we go more towards a different perspective of looking data, different perspective of solving their problem? What do you think is the future?
Yeah, I think I'm going to give the very annoying product manager answer, which is it depends. And it depends, I think, on a couple of factors. Primarily, what is the stage of the business that you're building, and what is your business model? So if you're at the stage where you've established good product market fit, you have a solid base of customers who are sticky, they're sticking with the product, and now you're trying to figure out, okay, how can we tweak this in different directions to monetize what customers are doing? That's a very different situation from you have an idea and a little bit of money and a team and nothing else, and you're really just iterating and kind of trying to fail fast and figure out what the product actually is. Those are very different situations, and how you're going to want to optimize your data play is going to be different in those two scenarios. So I think for all things in building a business, knowing what stage you're at and knowing what signal you're looking for to be able to move to the next stage is really important, and that's going to dictate your answer.
Thank you.
Behind you, wait, behind you. Sorry, he's been waiting forever.
Thanks for the talk. Of the people that you have hired, what were some of the most memorable portfolio projects that you have seen?
Are you asking like what has in an interview, what has somebody brought to me as a portfolio project? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm asking for basically ideas for portfolio projects, but the ones that stood out to you in your memory. You can come up.
I can't tell you ones that have stood out in my memory, but I could tell you ones that would if I ever saw them, right? And that would be someone live action showing me how they gather requirements from someone who's got a problem and how they work through a difficult situation, right? Like, this person's not understanding, they're getting frustrated with me, they don't have time, but they really want what I want. Well, I want to do something that's helpful to them. That would be really memorable to me. What I have seen is often like really cool visualizations, and I'm not knocking that because that is cool, but that there's a whole lot of other stuff that went on behind to get to that really cool visualization, and I know we don't have that. We don't have that, right? But what I do have is a lot of people I need you to get to know, and what I want to be able to see and would bump you up to the top of my list for interviewing was some way of showing me how you can do that, because those are the skills that I am always missing.
Yeah, I think agreed with that. If you can show me something really cool, but also explain why it's valuable, who it's for, and why it matters to them, that's really memorable and key.
Yeah, and I'm going to just take a slightly different twist on that. Is one, because I do often encounter students asking about a portfolio project, and when I was teaching, I would always say, pick something that you're passionate in. Don't just go pick something for the sake of picking it because it's there. You got to feel pretty good about it and passionate about it, because if you're passionate about it, when it comes to telling me about it, I'm going to see the excitement in your voice, and you don't have to memorize it, right? If it's something you don't care about, then you have to memorize things about it. If you have to memorize it, then you're going to forget. But if it's something that you're truly passionate about, like I always like to go back to environmental causes and things like that. If you can do something, as a portfolio around that, you feel really good about it, you're going to sit in front of that person and exude confidence and excitement about it, and that's going to resonate, right? And you're going to say, wow, you actually sold me on that. That's pretty good, right? So don't just pick something for the sake of picking something and saying, oh, I begrudgingly do that there. Get something you're really excited about. And sometimes it takes a while to get there, but get it, because once you get it, people are going to feel that confidence.
Kind of going back to change, which was asked before about customers and trying to get them to, or I guess how change is perceived. So when it comes to employees, actually, how do you get them to adopt these sort of metrics, or specifically like performance metrics or something like that? Or I imagine in the construction industry, it's probably really prevalent that people are doing a job and they don't want to stop to like put data in an iPad or something like that. So basically, how do you convince your employees to also be receptive to change when it comes to implementing data?
If I knew the answer to that, I would be living on an island somewhere, because I would be so rich, because I would have sold the answer to that to everyone, right? Again, back to this is a people job, and changing people is hard. Like, people don't want to. Well, they do want to, but they don't really want to, right? It's a lot of effort. Sticks and carrots is the answer, right? And for me, sometimes it's been finding, I'm really lucky at Graham, I think, because the senior leadership are predominantly engineers, so they understand data at a basic level. And they understand the point of it, and they understand, why we might want to get a bit cleverer about it. So that helps. And then they are the stick, right? If you can get them to the point of being like, you will put this data in, and you will do it this way, right? But you always have to then still have the relationship with the people who are doing the typing and saying, like, come on. Often it's just exposing to them the decision that gets made 3 steps up the chain from you on the stuff you're putting in is the decision you're annoyed about, right? They keep doing this stupid thing, and they keep sending this stuff to us, and it's all wrong. And like, you put it in the first place. That was you. This is a closed loop, right? So how can we get people all through the organization better understanding how the work that they are doing is directly impacting the decisions that are being made a little ahead and all the way up to the strategic. And then sometimes crying. Like sometimes just crying and being like, please just put it out of it, okay? It's all valid.
I 100% agree on the sticks and carrots approach, because sometimes it's just a lack of awareness too, right? Like, out in the field, that person's doing their job is getting done, things are being operated, they don't see the value of getting that quality data in a timely fashion into the iPad, right? Well, I've already got it written on a piece of paper here, the well or whatever we're operating on here is running just fine, I don't see any red lights going off. I'm good, right? So how do you kind of connect them and make them feel like they're part of it and understand what I call the bigger data chain, right? The value chain in behind that. So it's hard, it's not easy, crying might work. So it's not easy, but it's a matter of educating and just showing them and throwing some sticks and carrots in there, and having an executive team that supports it is important, right? Tone at the top. If the executive team doesn't care, you expect that person to care? No.
Yeah, and I think it's really important too, if you're talking about, broad company-wide metrics, you have a key performance indicator, you have something that everyone's supposed to be focused on, it's so fundamental that that metric is understandable. Like, every single person should be able to say, this is what our performance indicator is, and this is why it matters. This is why it actually matters to me, in my job, in my function, in my team. And it should also be actionable, because I think, as I mentioned in a previous comment, if you don't know how your behavior is going to change, if you don't know what is going to be different for you based on this number, why should you care about it? And I think that a lot of times, in organizations, it's either a matter of, there's too many different things being tracked and it's not clear why these things are important, or again, as both of you mentioned, it's not tied back to how does this actually impact me, and how, when I track this data, how does this change things in my team, 3 months, 6 months down the road.
It's also helped at Graham to put terrible data into reports and then say to people, your project's going really badly. And they're like, oh, that's all right. And we're like, that's what you put in, so that's how it's going. And now it's landing on a list on the chief executive's whiteboard. You don't want to be on that list. So how about we get this kind of sorted out? I'll help you. Like, I'm here to help, right? I would also say probably 95% of Graham construction has no idea that I exist. And that data work, right? And they think that the be-all and end-all of IT is laptop cords and stuff like that. So, you have to be a little bit open to the fact that a lot of people have not been exposed to this kind of stuff. So they just have no idea, right, what we're trying to do in the background, which is why you want to bring that, the roadshow of selling yourself and selling the ideas.
Thank you. Also, the panel has been excellent so far. I appreciate it.
So far, we've still got time to disappoint you.
Let's get the ball quickly.
We'll take one last question. Yeah.
And my question, because we have a product manager on the panel, is we talked a lot about how, well, data traditionally in IT, engineering, business, and those realms, we've been talking a lot about the importance of understanding customers and people, and identifying problems to solve. Do you see a move of data from more of the engineering technical side into more product realm your roles?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're not making data-informed and data-driven decisions as a product manager, you're just guessing, and you're really not doing your product or your customers a service. So being able to assess whether what you're doing is being successful or not is huge, and the only way to do that is with product analytics and with data. And I myself and my team, we believe really strongly in the value of cross-functionality and of getting all of those voices around the table. So having that data literacy, and you don't have to be a data scientist to be a product manager, but having that understanding of what are the challenges associated with doing data work, with doing data engineering and so forth, and being able to engage with your colleagues to come up with the best solution to a problem is huge. I think that even if you don't come from a technical background, having that literacy is really important so that you can have those conversations.
One of the things we've been talking about at Graham, because when you start with a blank slate, sometimes it's a little bit easier, And we had a reporting team, right, that were building these paginated reports. That's cool, that's where we were at. But more and more we've been shifting the thinking, I've been shifting the thinking towards, it's not really about a report or a dashboard or a model or anything, it's about a data product, right, that is serving a need to our business. So bringing some of that product thinking and that product mindset into how we iterate and deliver on these things, which should be living. Like a report should never just be this static thing that goes out forever, right? So how can we bring some of that product mindset into how we deliver whatever the product is that comes from our department?
I 100% agree, and then, honestly, I just had a light bulb going off my head here, just thinking about it as a product, right? Maybe that's a way to elevate data, right? And because if people hear data, it's like, oh, it's just that thing that IT takes care of, right? But if it's a product, I want a product, I want it to be shiny, I want the advertising, I want the marketing, I want the sales, because a product is something a little bit more tangible, right? If it's data, too many people kind of discount it, so maybe it got me thinking differently about some things. I like that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The presentation.
Thank
We can do a presentation next year, maybe, Chris.
Okay, folks, thank you so much for all your questions. Thank you so much to you three for your phenomenal answers and for giving us all some time to today.